Good evening. I'm going to call to order this special meeting of the Perrysburg School Board on Wednesday, August 10th, 2022. Roll call, please. Mr. Drewier.
Mrs. Eubank.
Here.
Dr. Reffert.
Here.
Mr. Pullman.
Here.
Mr. Bennington.
Here.
Ms. Larimer.
And I know Ms. Larimer will be attending a little bit later. She had a slight conflict. So if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I am going to dispense with the safety briefing tonight since everybody's familiar with it. Next, I need a motion to adopt the proposed agenda. The agenda consists of an executive session, potential board discussion afterwards. So do I have a motion to accept the proposed agenda? Ms. Eubank, thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Mr. Pullman. And roll call, please.
Mrs. Eubank.
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Dr. Reffert.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington, I know that we normally live stream these, but we had an issue with the equipment. And I know there's a part that has to be replaced. So we're able to record this and upload it afterwards, but it's not being live streamed now. So I know we've been in the mode of recording, live streaming, and we're hoping to have that repaired as quickly as possible. However, there's nothing we can do about it now until we receive that that part is delivered. So sorry for that. Just wanted to explain the difference.
Yeah,
so.
Okay, so next is on the agenda is we need a motion for an executive session for the discipline and the investigation of charges and or complaints against the employee who requests a hearing before the board. Do you have a motion, please?
So moved.
Dr. Reffert?
Second.
Ms. Larimer? And roll call?
Dr. Reffert.
Yes.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank.
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes. So we will go into executive session. We may or may not have to take some action after that session. Okay, so we are back in session. Appreciate the press kind of waiting out from our executive session and rejoining us again. So now the next item on the agenda is a board discussion, and there is a board discussion to be had about this executive session. And for purposes of context, we had a executive session last week in which we were discussing the appeal of an employment action on the behalf of a district employee. So we met again today to talk about, ask clarifying questions based off of our reviews of the material of that appeal that we heard about last week. Remind the board that and I don't feel like I need to, but I just, we're dealing with a public employee, we're dealing with student issues, so we're going to be very careful not to violate any employment law, FERPA considerations, anything else about confidentiality. So I'm going to lead off the discussion here, which probably isn't in my nature, but we've got kind of two questions in front of us. So part of this appeal process was an investigation that was done by the district. So one of the questions in front of us is, and the kind of the question at hand is that there was a finding of discrimination by a public employee, by this public employee in that investigation. So first, and it came to a result, a finding of discrimination. So the first question to this board is, do we uphold that? Do we want to reverse that decision? And then the second course of action, depending on, well, really independent of that first question is, there was a non-renewal of a contract was one of the remedies, or I'm sorry, we did not renew a one-year contract related to this, a public employee. Additionally, there was a suspension, 5-day suspension, which we understand is now being grieved with the union. So given that context, it's probably time for the discussion. I'm going to put out a straw man to start the discussion. So I guess this is akin to a resolution. Our parliamentary expert here will keep me in line here. So this resolution, which I'm seeking, a motion and a second, let me read it. The Board of Education supports the findings of discrimination as presented by the administration. The Board of Education, however, modifies the remedy to include the superintendent providing professional development and training to the staff member during the 2022-2023 school year. It also supports the 5 days of suspension, but recognizes that needs to work through the OPSI grievance process. And then after satisfaction of 1 and 2 above, consider the staff for the advisory position, which was to be applied for in the 2023-2024 school year. So with that, the process here, going to need a motion and a second to have a debate of that motion.
So you made that motion. Yeah.
I made that. Oh, okay. So I guess that's my
your
first. So I need a
motion.
second
Yeah,
for that
yeah,
motion.
yeah.
Thank you.
And then we discuss it after?
And then we'll discuss it if this motion is accepted for discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a second, and we need roll call, or
Discussion.
we're in, okay.
Go into discussion. You want me to elaborate on the parliamentary procedure here?
Please.
So there's a motion and a second. You can discuss it. If someone wants to amend the recommendation, you can do so as a motion, require a second, then you would vote on that amendment. And so you could layer onto that motion, if that makes any sense. So you just kind of take it one step at a time. You have a motion and a second, discuss it. If you want to modify it, you can do so with a motion to modify the motion.
Could I ask for you to read it again? I'm a visual type of guy,
Sorry,
I
it's-
got,
yeah.
you know.
Apologize, I didn't have a
I'll
copy
listen
for everyone.
again very intently.
I got it. The Board of Education supports the finding of discrimination as presented by the administration. The Board of Education, however, modifies the remedy to include the superintendent providing professional development and training to the staff member during the 2022-2023 school year. Also recommends the holding up of the 5 days of suspension, although recognizing that it is going through the OPSI grievance process. So satisfying number 1 and 2 above, consider the staff for any advisory positions which is applied for the 2023-2024 school year.
So you said, can I ask, you said holding up the
Yeah,
5
so-
days. What, referring to holding up?
So the investigation recommended a 5-day suspension from pay as part of this public employee's role. This public employee has a role inside the schools too, is also an employee of the school district, in addition to previously being under a supplemental contract. So one of the recommendations from the report, from the investigation, was related to that role as an employee of the district to suspend the employee for 5 days. So what I'm trying to clarify, and maybe I didn't say it very well, so that is under a grievance right now. That employee has filed a grievance with the district.
Yeah.
And, we can only, I'm proposing recommending that, the district has latitude. Maybe I'm saying the district has latitude to resolve that up to 5 days through a grievance process.
Yeah, the board, because the employee is part of the OPSI bargaining unit, they have a due process in place that if there is a dispute over discipline, they can exercise that. So this employee has done that. And so if the board says, I'd like to do 10-day suspension instead of 5, they can't, the board can't impose that because the person's a member of the collective bargaining agreement. Likewise, if the board says, I'd like to do a 2-day suspension, we still would have to get the process through with OPSI to determine, because they might want 0 days. So the board isn't in a position where it can impose a sanction. So what I heard was recommending the 5 days, knowing that it will be going through the OPSI grievance process, which may result in something less, but no more than 5 days.
Thank you.
If that's, yeah.
You heard me better than I said it. So.
Oh, no.
Okay, so just to clarify, we are still making the recommendation of the 5 days.
That's right.
And
You're
that's in your
supporting, making a recommendation of 5 days. Whatever the result of the grievance process is what it's going to be, because we
Okay.
can't impose that,
Okay.
but we're holding up that recommendation.
So if I heard you also say, did you say for the PD for that staff member or for all staff members?
So I said for that staff member.
So does that exclude everybody else? Because what I would like to see, since this is clearly something that is easy to slip into, that
We do it for all.
this be a very strong focus this fall, for this fall's PD, be a very strong focus for this fall.
For all staff
In which
members.
case, it would also cover that, this staff member, because then they would be included. So the way it was worded and what you said, that staff member would be included in that district PD. But I think Lori and I are both saying we would like to see it
For all
for all,
staff.
because I don't think you could do this kind of training and review too much. It's just too easy of a slippery slope to get into. So I'm not sure, Randy, if that needs to be expressed in the resolution. Do we need to, am I asking to modify that resolution?
Laura, let me ask a clarifying question. That every employee still, every year goes to Title IX, and FERPA training is part of our annual training. You are asking to add additional training for all staff, is that? And if so, it needs to be, you're gonna need to make a motion to add that language with a second, then the board would have to vote on it.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to ask then to Don, since he's still here. With that additional information that the staff goes through FERPA and Title IX training, if we were to request that there be something additionally done for, like a morning session or 2 sessions available during a PD session day, is that possible, or is it ridiculously redundant?
That would be possible, and it never hurts to have those discussions again,
Okay.
and, to remind, the importance of those things, so it would definitely be possible.
So is the staff getting that, the training, Randy, that you just mentioned, is that something that has occurred like before school or like right now, or?
There's a deadline.
We have to October 1st,
Yeah,
right?
there's a deadline that the Title IX and other types of training have to be completed by that time.
Now, is it, Don, are the non-district, I say, all the,
All employees go through.
even everyone's just supplementals, so our lay coaches and lay advisors, they all get that too?
That's one I'll have to double check on.
That'd be my concern, that group might be a group that's missed.
I think one thing that the board may want to consider respectfully is we're here to hear about a case of an individual who the board is weighing whether or not there was a finding of discrimination. I think the motion was to address that individual's behavior and action. And what I hear the amendment, and just clarifying, is that then it would not be just exclusive to that person, then every employee would be getting the additional training. And that person who brought the appeal to the board would be getting the same as everyone else who hasn't been accused of a violation. So I just want to clarify that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's like that
It's
classroom.
muddying the waters,
Someone
yeah.
threw a pencil in the classroom, so we're going to penalize everybody. I don't really think that's, if they're getting PD, if they're getting the discriminatory and confidentiality
Title IX,
in
yeah.
PD already, I think we should stick with the individual.
I think calling attention to shortcomings through the investigation, it was identified that there may be some shortcomings with the training that has taken place. Well, not shortcomings with the training, but the reaction of some other staff in this process. So perhaps that's something that we set aside and treat differently than this particular action, because that's something that we don't want to have happen. It's a great point to raise, so.
Thank you for that clarification. That does help my thought process.
So if we, just the fact that we're talking about it and alerting it and throwing it on to poor Don's lap over there and giving it something else to worry about, it does, I mean, what you just said is what Lori and I are kind of itchy about, is that they've had training, they've had this information, yet this still happened. So that was my concern, that it is a slippery slope. It's easy to fall into the redundancy of the training and the hearing it again. And we've got so many new staff members. I'm not
That's a
sure
good
when
point.
fall PD happens.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't need to be addressed in this resolution, I'm fine on putting that on the
Agreed.
table as long as it's addressed.
I think
We'll work with the administrative team and Mr. Christie, and then we'll report back to the board HR committee, you know, how we're plugging it in, what we're doing. We'll look for maybe some products that we can do, you know, to cover that. So if the board desires that, sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
especially for the supplementals, for the people
I
who hold
think
supplementals that
that's a
aren't
good point.
necessarily district employees as well.
It's a real good point, because it's just like CPR training.
Right.
I've been through CPR training, but until you've actually done it, there's a difference. I've done it a couple of times. Title IX, I've never been through the training, but never been in that situation. So there's always that disconnect. And so I think I think it's a good point that
For sure.
training and application are two different things.
Yes, thank you for that
Well,
clarification.
Okay.
Mr. President, Eric, having listening to attorneys and listened to our executive meeting and reading the documentation, there's no doubt in my mind that we should uphold the discriminatory type of repercussion for what took place. However, I look back at everything I've read from witnesses to parents to children. You know, he said, she said, who do you believe? Here's a 20-plus year worker in our district who has done some things that maybe he shouldn't have. And I'm wondering if we could not look at supporting the findings, but lessen the blow, so to speak. I would go back to, again, like we do with our code of conduct, 20% of the season, and reinstate her as the advisor for the twirling group. I just think that reading everything, hearing everything, in my opinion, the 50% in a feather decision is difficult. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm saying 20 years has to mean something, and the recommendations from other parents and adults in this community has to mean something toward the repercussions for the employee of our district. I wanted to get that out there, because that's how I feel.
Are you saying then you want to make an amendment to the resolution to switch it to that? I mean, we can agree that there was.
Well, we have a discussion on that. I mean, I haven't heard from the others. I've gone from feeling one way about it and then hearing things, feeling another way about it. I still feel in my heart that there's no, even though it happened, the intent was not.
Malicious?
Yes, it was. In my heart, I don't believe it was. And with the reports that we've been given and the affidavits and the testimonies that we've been given, I just feel that to lose that this year, the whole year, and give it back maybe next year, I'm thinking we should go back to reinstate her this year. And then maybe the consequence is 20% of the contest, just like we would do for our athletes in our code of conduct.
Okay, so if we were to do that, how do we handle the current advisor for the Majorettes?
Yeah, so we have not hired an advisor yet. We've named, there's somebody who's filling that role now, but the board hasn't taken official action until our meeting on Monday night. So technically, there is not a board-approved person. So what we would do is, under Mr. Pullman's, what his comments would lead us to believe is we would hire that person, but then impose a 20% suspension of the season upon hiring them.
One, I would assume, as I think about the logistics of this, it's also that, there's a supplemental amount that's tied to this, so you split that 20/80, depending on the amount of time each person's in the role. I mean, I think we gotta consider that too. We
Oh,
can't-
absolutely.
Assuming
That's
that,
something that can be done, Randy? Is that?
yes, that can be done. It's done, we do it for coaching positions all the time where we split contracts, but obviously, the person has to agree to it.
And you also have to make sure that we have somebody to cover for the 20% that the advisor wouldn't be there. So who's that person going to be?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
The-
so it can't be, it has to be a co-something, or somebody else is going to have to be responsible for the 20% that
Well,
an
maybe,
employee is not there for.
can somebody reach out to that other person that was going to be on Monday's discussion and see? Like, do we need to work that out before? do?
If the board were to say that that's what it wanted to do, we would have to work on a solution to bring to the board. So I don't think we have time today to work out those details, and then, unless the board wants to take action on Monday, then we could have a definite plan. But for right now, the board would say, this is what we want to do.
Figure
And
it
we
out.
would look for someone who would cover that, and, we would work with,
Would cover the 20%?
yeah, so.
And then Andrea then the employee would come in?
Yeah, and so I think that would be something we could do. I don't think it's a stumbling block. If the board's direction is to do that, we could do that. So I don't, it's
Do you
it's
wanna
not
make a
something that we
motion?
couldn't do.
Are you going to make a motion to add that?
Well, if there's any more discussion, I can amend it.
What I would do is, if you want to proceed, Ray, make that a motion to amend the original motion, then we'll require a second, and then we'll have to do a roll call vote
On that amendment.
on that amendment.
Yeah, and then it becomes
Is there further
attached.
discussion, though, before the roll call vote, after
Yes,
the
you can,
amendments? Okay.
you can, once you make the motion and there's a second, then we're locked into having
A discussion?
Discussion.
a vote.
Oh, okay. But
But you'll want to have a discussion before you had the vote.
Okay, then I wanted to add something. I'm thinking along the lines of what Ray has proposed. But I feel a little differently about the discrimination piece. I don't feel that there was a preponderance of evidence, in my opinion, over everything I read, that there was discrimination. But I'm reading the room, and I'm not going to make a proposal to defer what you've stated. But I just wanted to say what my opinion is. But I do like what you said. This person has a strong employment history that has been fine up until this incident, and the decision to not offer it this year, I feel, was harsher than what I would like. So, if you would propose that, I agree with that.
Are you seconding that motion?
Well, I don't think, I'm confused. Did you say, is that a motion you already did?
I haven't
Yeah.
amended it yet.
We're still in discussion, so one item, so just as I think about it, so this would be removing some of the conditions, I guess really the one condition of additional training.
Well, I
We
wouldn't-
could
I
still
wouldn't
put
remove
that in place, but the employment,
I would add that in there. I would keep that.
it certainly is, I believe it should be kept in there as well.
That employee.
The employment decision in my motion was dependent on completion of training. I think logistically speaking, that training is still necessary.
Yeah.
But this employment decision is no longer dependent on that training.
Absolutely.
As of, probably Monday's board meeting, if this is worked out, this supplemental contract would be in place and move forward on faith that the training would be completed.
You make a good point, because you say the condition of employment is a supplemental, that's considered employment, right?
Correct.
So the way that your motion was stated, again, we don't have it in front of us, the way your motion was stated said that employment is dependent upon 1 and 2 being done. So we
So what I'm
might
thinking-
have to,
Well, I
Fix
would
that a little
recommend,
bit.
yeah, I would recommend removing 3 and replacing 3 with however we word.
And you can, and we got time, you can, on Monday, you can, Tom, it's kind of Tom's court here, but if, assuming it worked out, recommend hiring this person, 80% of that contract, on the condition the additional training is completed.
Well,
Before they, whatever, the point is, you can hire on conditional employment that, you can do it anytime, but, you know, whatever those conditions are, they gotta satisfy before they actually start, so.
and I
We wanna
want to
document that,
You know,
that's
this
all.
is more for me belt and suspenders than it is any true concern that this training won't happen too. I want to be clear about that. That's not my concern, just making sure the resolution saying what we want to say.
okay.
Any other discussion on this amendment?
Randy,
We're
did you
going to
capture
vote
that
on it, though,
amendment?
right?
So do I have to amend now?
Yes.
Yes.
So you want to replace, so I'll start you off. So you want to replace paragraph 3 of the resolution on the table, restate it to say,
That this said person would be our majorette advisor with a 20% discipline for what took place. Supporting the findings of the administration, but recognizing that this needs to take place. And also, you've got it in there with respect to the professional development for that individual.
Yeah, that was number 2.
okay, so give me a second here.
I would include the date, the 2022 school year.
Correct, yes.
Did you do that?
I did not.
The
Okay.
2023 school year.
No, 2022.
This is 2020, this is the 2023 school year.
22, 23?
Yeah, this is,
Oh, school year. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. What
yeah,
day?
it's weird, yes. We're in the 2023 school year.
Calendar year 2022. Okay.
Yeah.
However you want to say it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You're a financial guy. You're on the
FY '23.
So here's,
2023 financials, but yeah.
here's my attempt then to kind of clarify. So item 3 is rephrased, amended to say satisfy, or upon, or it is amended to say, will be hired as the advisor for 80% of the 22-23 school year, conditional upon the satisfaction of number 1 and 2.
With, yeah, the clarification would be it's for that supplemental for a major ed advisor is what it is. So whatever length of season that would take place for the major ed advisor.
For the majorette advisor. Okay.
Could you reread it one more time?
I'm
what
going to
you got?
reread. I'm going to reread the whole thing in
You
its
can read it.
entirety now. Okay. The Board of Education supports the findings of discrimination as presented by the administration. The Board of Education, however, modifies the remedy to include the superintendent providing professional development and training to the staff member during the 2022-2023 school year, and recommends the 5-day suspension pending the outcome of the OPSI grievance process. And the employee will be hired as the supplemental majorette advisor for 80% of the 2022-2023 school year, conditional upon satisfying number 1 and 2.
Nice.
So would you like to make a motion then for that amendment.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we accept what Mr. Bennington just read.
And a second, please.
Second.
Ms. Eubank, thank you.
Now, clarifying, you're voting just on the amendment right now.
Okay, we're voting just on the amendment. So roll call, please.
Mr. Pullman,
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes. So now I'd like to, so I'm going to call to question the entire resolution as amended. Do I have a motion? Do I need, I'm going to call to question. And
You already
we can
have a
take-
motion and a second, so all you have to do,
Let's call the question for the vote.
So roll call, please, Mr. Drewer.
Mr. Bennington,
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Motion carries. So we will wait a pending supplemental contract on Monday's meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
Ready.
Can I have that? Your
Are we?
Scratch.
I sort of typed it here, but he probably had it.
With that, there is no more, there's nothing else on the agenda. So I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Ms. Larimer,
Second.
Dr. Reffert, roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman,
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes, we are adjourned.